What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. The views and the opinions expressed are those of your host and our guest. Today we sit down with Buzz Lechowski. He is a Division Chief up in Sedona, Arizona, and if you don't know, it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet and is quite mystical. We talk about what it's like to work at a tourist destination and some of the challenges. We also talk about the upside of that and what it's like to work in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And we talk about so much more. Enjoy. So, Buzz, thank you so much for taking an opportunity to sit down and chat with me. First of all, I love when we have an opportunity to just talk. And that's all I want to do today is just talk a little bit. And we had the opportunity. We're here at the CEOP conference, which is the Chief Executive Officer program. What brought you? I can dive right in. Tell me about that, Buzz. But I want to talk about that a little bit. But I want to talk about who you are and some of the things that you're involved with. I know you participate with the Burn Foundation or Burn Camp and things like that. And those are all you do a bunch of really cool stuff in addition to your day job as a fire chief, as a fire division chief. I know when we talk rank, it gets a little muddy because you're a 3 bugle.
We're 2. They say it's a lateral from BC. It's not really. It's more responsibility, more work.
Copy.
But still 2.
That's what I complain about too. More responsibility.
Yeah,
more
I'm not complaining. It's just the reality.
So
divisions chief.
So Buzz, tell us a little bit about. Tell my vast audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So thank you. And Buzz Lechowski. I work for the Sedona Fire District. Been there since 1997. Was a volunteer there.
How many years ago was that when you were a volunteer?
That was in early 97 or somewhere in there. Yeah. And
how did you land in Sedona? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago.
Oh, that's a far cry from
yeah, for sure. So, yeah, we'll do non-fire department stuff. Grew up in Chicago. My family moved back and forth to Arizona a few times. My parents had come through. They drove from Chicago to the Grand Canyon on their honeymoon, and they loved Sedona. They drove through sort of old Sedona, still sort of movie set Sedona at the time. Dirt roads everywhere, no stoplights.
It's changed a little.
It's changed a little bit. So time.
Do me a favor. Tuck your collar under. Which way? That one. It's rubbing on the chinkus, and you can hear it. No, it's all good. Just
like this.
Is that how? Yeah, does that work?
Okay, I don't know. Sorry.
It's my tech. It's not you.
Is it too much?
It's me. It's not you.
Should I go this way?
No, it's just that stupid cord catches it. Okay. We'll edit this out. Maybe not.
It's a good tactic, though, to not be like thinking about what I'm saying when you're telling me to manipulate stuff. So yeah, we actually lived in Buckeye, unincorporated Buckeye, in the very early 80s for a little while, and then moved back to Chicago. Came back when I was in high school, and then I immediately left the day after high school.
Yeah,
because
what part of Chicago?
Northwest side, a neighborhood called Edison Park is where I was born.
Chicago's an interesting city.
Yeah.
It's what was your favorite part about being in Chicago? I mean, as a kid, did you get around in town much? Or?
No, we lived primarily in one of the near northwest suburbs called Mount Prospect, kind of near Des Plaines, Illinois.
Okay.
And going, quote unquote, into the city was this mythical Oz-like thing that you didn't really go downtown much. You just stayed in your own little thing. Plus, you're younger. I wasn't driving at the time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there's much public transport.
It's everywhere for sure. I think if I would have been there while I was the time period that I was here at that age, I would have embraced that a little more. Yeah. I didn't get really into that till I went back.
Yeah,
because I went back there for college after high
Oh,
school.
okay.
Yeah, but so I went to high school. I went to high school in Cottonwood, but lived in Sedona at the time with my mom, and grew up in pre-boom Sedona for those 4 years, and then went to school in Illinois for a while. I was wrestling in college, and then
nice. Was that something you picked up in high school?
Before that, in Illinois, and it seems like any cold weather place, wrestling's bigger than not.
Indoor,
I mean, it's pretty big here, but yeah, you can just stay inside. So I wrestled when maybe 5th grade on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's really big wrestling culture in that part of the world. And I wrestled here, and then I went back to school there in a town called Kankakee, Illinois. And it's actually where the Bears do their preseason stuff now, the college I went to. And then quickly came back.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about collegiate wrestling for a second. What's some of the memory that stands out for you as a wrestler?
Yeah, I was very surprised. Well, you go from, and not to be self-deprecating, I was mediocre, could hang with some big wrestlers,
Okay.
Went there, and you quickly go from big fish, small pond to like really world-class competition. There were several national champions on the team I was on. One guy had wrestled in the Pan Am Games.
Right.
They were just world-class from all over. So I didn't realize that college sports was your job.
Interesting. Okay.
I had the college experience thing on my mind, and I actually chose schools based on if they had a wrestling program or not. That was it. Because I figured the rest I could figure out.
Okay. They all have a math class.
It had nothing to do with academics.
Yeah, every school has English and math. Like that part will solve itself.
Totally.
Can I wrestle?
In fact, I took art classes then because I was going to be an art teacher. So I did English and art at the same time. But wrestling, you realize right away that humility is baked in wrestling, even as a young kid.
Oh, yeah.
One false move, doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't take a whole game to blow it. It could take one, especially at a higher level, one lapse of concentration even.
Yeah.
One rhythmic step that they can pick up on, and boom, you're on your back, really.
Right.
So when you go to a higher level, humility comes along with
You're
that.
getting served it up daily.
You get served up. And I was new. I was, this freshman to this established program, and thankfully there were several freshmen coming in, of course. But
now, did you come in on scholarship or like walk on, or like what
I
was
walked
the
on.
pretense?
I walked on with the, kind of wink handshake. Do this year.
Okay.
There was athletes graduating. That it's a very underfunded sport.
Yeah.
And then partway through, as they were going to go out, we were going to become the next
some
scholarship.
money,
It wasn't going to be a lot.
Yeah.
And then that year, they canceled the wrestling program at that school.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
right at the end of it. And I had no idea entering
bummer.
in that had been in talks for quite some time.
Sure.
So then I could not afford to go there anymore at all. So,
bummer.
and there was a girl, of course, and so I came.
There's always
back
a
to
love
Arizona,
interest.
yeah, who's now my wife. So it all worked out. But yeah, college wrestling was amazing, but it was a full-time job.
Yeah. How so?
Sure. Well, that program, it's really all I know, but a lot of forced camaraderie, forced. Like we woke up in the morning, they knocked on our door, the upperclassmen, and you ran. And then you went to school immediately after classes. We had a study hall. We had practice, and then they would come to our random dorm rooms and wake us up to go for another run or to go lift after that. And this would be in the freezing cold of northern Illinois. And, just the rigors of it.
Yeah.
And I liked that part of it. I love the tribe part. It probably prepared me for the fire department a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine it would. I know that, in my experience watching wrestlers, nobody seems to work as hard as wrestlers do. Again, I mean that sincerely. Like, every sport works hard, especially the collegiate level and above, right? They work hard, but wrestlers put in a degree of work that is just so much more intense. And there's something about, the other thing about wrestling, and this is what I've learned in my limited experience doing jiu-jitsu, is that it's you and your opponent. There's no teammate to blame. There's nobody else. What happens on that mat is between you and your opponent.
For sure.
And if you, like you mentioned, the concentration, right? That focus when you're about to touch hands and go, like, it's legit.
Yeah, it's weirdly that way. It's only you, so the cause of maybe a team loss could be you if you don't provide the points through a win. but at the same time, you're going for a thing on your own also.
Right.
Because you have an individual standing and things too.
Right.
And no one's there. I can remember almost every time, this is so weird as I look back, wishing the match would get canceled while I was entering the mat. Like, hey, maybe I won't have to. It was so weird. And then immediately just switched on.
Yeah.
But until then, I was just super nervous and anxious. Like, oh, man, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And then I'd step on and click.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard other wrestlers, high-level wrestlers, talk about like being flush with nerves and wanting to vomit. And I think about like the fight or flight response. Like you are just so, your body is flooded with hormones and anxiousness and in preparation for a, not to put too much pine on it, but a life or death conflict, right? You are about to go head to head, one-on-one with a competitor who's trying to beat the pulp out of you.
Yeah, for sure. There's a vulnerability with it too.
Yeah.
That I would never have said the word vulnerable then, of course, but
because you are now more vulnerable.
Well, and it wasn't in the vocabulary then. But you're, even what you wear is very exposing. You're one way to lose is being on your back with someone else holding you there. I mean, there's some pieces there.
The more you say it, the less I want to talk about it.
That are like, it's very preparatory for future conflict, probably, or avoidance of conflict. No, it was a great experience, though. I loved it. I still very dear friends that I lived through that.
So what's one thing you reflect on and you like when you look back and you go, man, when I was tackling the mats every day, this stands out in your head? What's the takeaway?
You have more left to work. Your capacity is still there when your brain tells you it's not. So you could be completely fatigued to literally you're probably already not eating well. It's one of the dirty secrets of that, is trying to maintain weight. You really have the practices. They're inexplicable to someone who hasn't done it. Even other sports, I'm sure there's hard ones, but I can't imagine a harder one. I've certainly never done a harder thing physically than that. So there's all these points where you go, yeah, I'm out. I'm done. I'm going to let go physically and mentally, or even, maybe he'll just take me down, that kind of thing. And there's always more in the tank than your brain will let you. You fool yourself and you have reserves. And that has translated since then for sure. Like if I'm running, because I'll trail run now, I'm always like, man, maybe just a couple miles today. And I'm always like, oh, come on. I know you have more. Even though there's many years since I was 18 years old wrestling.
Right. So. But that's a really good point is when you are in that lowest, and I think this applies in a lot of ways, right? When you're at that lowest point, there is always more that you can do. Yeah. You think you're done. You just need to reevaluate real quick.
For sure.
Take a breath, reset, and reengage. Because it's that space between your ears, that 6 inches between your ears, that really controls a lot of that.
Yeah, I agree. It's not just physical things.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes the whatever you're being overwhelmed with, or you think your capacity is tapped out. Right. There's more. There's reframing. Yeah. Gaining new perspective. Yeah. The breath, the pause. Yeah. It's definitely there. There's opportunity to step back a little.
Well, oftentimes you talk about like the stress cycle, right? I was talking to someone else the other day. It's like being, we are biologically predisposed, right? We used to be chased by saber-toothed tigers, but now there is no saber-toothed tiger. So what is the thing that floods us with emotion, right? It can be anything. It can be a conversation with your spouse. It can be, it could be stepping on a mat, as a 50-year-old in a jiu-jitsu tournament, right? Like there's these things that flood us, and that stress cycle has to take place. And if you're trying to make next step decisions in the middle of that stress cycle, you got to be careful because you can make an emotional decision, right? So sometimes you got to wait until the stress has worked through its cycle. The saber-tooth tiger is gone. You've reset. Okay, now I'm going to re-engage and think about next steps or whatever. But we say things sometimes that get us in trouble in the middle of in the heat of the moment because we don't frame it correctly and we don't step outside the emotion.
Yeah, you can't be angry and smart at the same time. And that's because your emotions, like the rational brain, it's hard to do math when you're super anxious. You can't.
That explains my whole elementary school career.
You can switch back and forth very quickly, but both at once, your brain does not do that. So same thing there.
Okay, so you left the wrestling mats, came out west.
Yep, moved back.
And you moved to Sedona or Cottonwood? You moved out west. You moved back to Arizona.
That area, northern Arizona, north central Arizona.
Okay.
Verde Valley area. I probably lived in Sedona right then.
Yeah.
Interesting part, my mom, who's one of my heroes, driving force, she went back to college right then.
Really?
It was really neat. And so she moved quickly. And then I think I couch surfed. Had a 67 Carmagia, and nice. I sort of had everything I own in that for a while and went from place to place working construction.
Oh, yeah.
And then I went back, reconciled with my girlfriend, who I had horribly ghosted. But she married me, and we're still married. Nice. So then I went back to northern Illinois and lived with my sister, just right next to O'Hare Airport. Like the planes came right in over our apartment and shook everything.
Oh, nice.
And I went to EMT class there and took some fire science classes.
What turned you on to that?
I had wanted to do that even while in school for things like art. Like college was for the experience and to wrestle for me at first. Yeah. That first iteration. When that wasn't working, I kind of, sadly, I didn't want to jump back in to that game of, trying out and all that stuff anymore. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wanted to stay close.
Yeah.
But at the time, especially in northern Arizona, there wasn't any really quality fire science programs at the community college level. There was a few EMT things. So I went back there, and there's community colleges there, practically universities. They're so big. And I don't know what turned me on, except just having that feeling of probably that eventually. I always wanted to teach something. I loved art. My mom's a really great artist. And then, but I always wanted to do that. And I can't put my finger on why at that time.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I can think of the fulfillment I've gotten and things and say, that must be why. Or some of the decisions, the intervening decisions, I could probably say that's why I did those. But at the time, I don't really know. Yeah. We lived right by a firehouse when I was younger, like a kid. And I remember them jogging around the neighborhood and doing a couple things
there
like
it
that.
Is.
For sure. And we would go there and talk to them and stuff. So I went to school there. And my EMT instructor was one of the first 3 Chicago fire paramedics that was on an engine at the time.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that was probably in 1993. Yeah, maybe 1994. A man named Gunther, and I can't remember his last name, but amazing guy, since, of course, retired. He was an old head even then. And he would tell us stories. This is probably not what you're looking for, but they would... Probably shouldn't.
Well, now you've set the trap. You have to tell the story.
He would tell all these Chicago fire stories of the antics and the runs, and that's really when I was like, whoa,
right,
this is great. But at the same time, the water he was swimming against, the currents, had to be as strong as anyone ever, because this person, he loved EMS.
Yeah.
Loved it. And in that culture, they weren't really going ALS yet. This was the first few folks that they had put on engines at the time. And since then, probably within 5 years, they got ambulances and things and went full ALS. But at that time, there was a handful. I want to say he was the first paramedic on the engine, but I think he was in the first grouping of like a couple.
Yeah.
But loved it and had a passion. And this practical, gritty, I don't know, just experience that he was a leader for sure.
Yeah.
He had both you know, very personable, but the passion of the way he taught it to 19, I think I was 19 or 20 then. It's just amazing.
Well, so why didn't you initiate a career in Chicago?
I loved the West again by then.
Yeah.
I love the city. Nothing disparaging against the Midwest or the big city Midwest. The pace of the West, southwestern Arizona, this part of the country, Arizona, and then where I was at the time, northern Arizona was just what I was after.
Yeah. Well, you had told me yesterday, we were chatting, and you told me how you were driving back and forth from Illinois in your Karmann Kia.
Yeah, I was.
That seems like I'm just going to say it, a little hippy dippy, like you needed to be out west.
For sure. Although if you want to get some second looks and some thumbs up and you drive a 60s air-cooled thing in the winter in Chicago, people are like, this guy is nuts.
That's pretty hardcore.
It was pretty hardcore. Yeah, but it doesn't start all the time. You have to heat up the battery even to go. It's not awesome. And at the time, it was, I just didn't know the thing. Eventually you realize there's, especially then, there's a lot of secret handshake. This is the system. If you know this guy, know that guy. I didn't know that was a thing.
Right.
I just thought people got a job. And so I thought, I'll just take these classes and go back to Arizona and go get a job.
Right.
And there it was even more you'd hear stories. A lot of people were naysayers about it. At the time, I think Chicago, the city of Chicago's list had been in place for, I want to say almost a decade or more.
Oh, okay.
And
so there's always significant barrier to entries, and yeah,
and there was, and the suburbs were great. I went to classes with a lot of guys that were already in the suburbs. I was so immature at the time and unwise. I didn't know I should get to know these guys and say, how do I do this? In fact, I wasn't, when I was thinking about talking to you today, I wasn't good at that part of saying I need help with a thing.
Right.
I don't think I'm good at it still. And for years, I wouldn't do anything like that. I'd be like, I'm going to figure this out for myself. It was super, super silly.
Yeah.
Then went back and I got married, worked construction, got married in Sedona, and then worked in a manufacturing company while trying to plug away at school still. And started volunteering in Sedona to get the experience. Never thought I would stay there ever. Was testing in the West. Kind of didn't want to be no offense to anyone in the Valley very much. So I was going to Utah and different places like that. Mm-hmm. And then in northern Arizona, Prescott, Sedona. And then Sedona was about to transition to a mostly career department.
Yeah.
At that time.
Was it kind of volunteer with paid on call?
Heavy volunteer.
And some full time?
I think there was 6 people per day. And our area of response is the same as it is today.
Oh, wow.
It's 270 square miles or something. Granted, the visitors weren't as great in volume. And then the call volume was still probably 2/3 what it is today. They still ran a lot.
Yeah.
It's not a lot compared to many places, but with 6 people, you just augmented by volunteers. It was really a volunteer system augmented by paid paramedics at the time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you got on in 98, you said?
Yeah, I worked 97 to 99, was full-time in 99.
Copy.
And then in 2001, Chief came in from Orange County, California, Orange County Fire Authority, and he hired 10 people the next year, 10 people, and then that was sort of the transition out. They kept transition volunteers to reserves. It was a huge political situation.
Yeah,
in fact, at the time, I was being the ambulance and people would be, are you paid or not? I mean, it was that way. And
the community, people you're transporting?
Yeah. Are you one of these union career guys? It was that kind of thing. And
well, and tell people a little bit about the community of Sedona if you feel comfortable.
Sure. Then, just quickly set the stage, a much younger community then. And when I was younger, it was much A lot more families, a lot more working families. You could live there. The tourist thing was always a thing, but since then, it has really been discovered internationally. So that changed everything with the, like everywhere, housing market probably
blossomed.
Yeah, and even in like 2000, 2001, I want to say like a double wide trailer on a 16th of an acre was 180 grand or something like that even then. So we lived in Sedona for a little while and then moved to Cottonwood where I live now. But, you know, recreational tourism, a lot of religious curiosity with the New Age movement and stuff is there, which has since turned into, there's a lot of that like commercialization of alien tours and things like that. But
interesting.
Yeah. So, which is great. If the alien people are listening,
they are for sure. 100%.
They're trolling for the word, disparaging comments against alien tours. Mountain biking, hiking, Jeep tours, the all-terrain, UTV side-by-side game today. Yeah, that's from a fire department standpoint. That's what we do. We're charged with all the backcountry rescues, kind of like Simba, like all you can see.
Right.
That's kind of how our district lies. Anything you can see, we're going to respond to, whether it's in our district or not, frankly, because no one's coming.
Right.
So we partner with the two sheriff's offices a lot and go out there, mostly for the recreational tourism. So.
Well, how many mountain rescues are you guys doing in a year-ish?
It's got to be 200 and something.
Yeah.
I bet it might be more than that.
Lots of walk downs off of.
Yeah, we do a lot of carryouts, steep angle.
Yeah.
The high angle, of course, are less, but there's a fair amount of that. Yeah. A lot of helicopter use, long line, short haul stuff.
Yeah, I could see folks. Yeah, I could see folks. It's easy to get up some of the slick rock, stabby type stuff. It's easy to get up it, but then you turn around and look down. And you're like, oh, whole new game.
Yeah, that's the theme for sure.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
And a lot of that area you can drive to. Right. One of my theories is people can get out of their car and walk directly to a thing. I think they minimize the risk, and you can get in very deep, well beyond your ability, your physical ability, your understanding, your water volume, your cell phone battery amount.
Yes.
Quickly get in trouble for sure. And that's what we do.
Yep.
If you can drive to it, I think it just creates more. Where if I have to plan and backpack and gear up,
it's a different person,
a whole different person. Though we do those, but those are usually the mid-level experience level, at least.
Yeah. Or they suffer an accident.
Correct. Right? Or it's traumatic or true medical emergency, and not just I shouldn't have been here, maybe. And I love that people go. I'm never. This now sounds like a disclaimer, but
walk it back.
I get because people often ask,
yeah,
what do you think about all these tourists? And it's like a baiting thing, right?
Right.
Well, I think this would be even the agency I work for's position. I get if someone has waited maybe their entire life to visit a place like Sedona, and they saved money for years. If it's 110 and they have the little bottle of water from the hotel, I get that they're probably going to go hiking. Do I agree? No. But I get it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not like I try not to judge the intent of them. They didn't intend for us to rescue them. I guarantee that part. So I don't mind so much.
I'll tell you the thing. So when I come up and visit your neck of the woods, the thing that drives me the craziest, or what rolls through my head that I think must drive you bananas, is the traffic. And those roads are tight. And I'm like, man, if there was any kind of emergency, it's going to take them forever to respond.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And with all the roundabouts, you can't pull over in a circle, right?
Yeah.
Traffic planners out there.
Well done.
It's not, it's just not made for that. So we, they have like rolling curbs and we go, but it'll take between two of our stations as a battalion chief, it'll take you an hour to go about 4 miles sometimes.
That's awesome.
I mean, a lot of times to get back. So we look at the traffic flow of who's moving where, especially for training and other things like that. Backup units, we'll just say stay there.
Right.
Because it's going to take you an hour to get back.
It's not even worth it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, that's one of the things that's fascinating me as I have an opportunity to sit and talk to folks from different parts of the country and whatnot, is just the challenges of response model based on the geography, based on the community kind of the nuances of the community,
Sure.
like tourism.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think about that in other places, like in the valley here, you think about rush hour traffic, right? How's that going to jam you up, and how's that going to impact response times or call volume? How does call volume affect response times, right? Because you're out of service so much. Or like out west in the Western Valley, you have these long response times just because you have a large community, but they're spread out. So you have silos of pockets of communities with lots of undeveloped land in between. So response times in between areas is long. So it's interesting, the dynamics that affect us. And as a chief officer, when you have to wrestle with some of these things, right, you start thinking about how it affects you and how do you fix it, right? What do you do about it? It's a tough question.
Yeah, and sometimes it puts you on a posture, I think, too much. This is just me. That you're preparing too much for the next one because of some of those idiosyncrasies with us, like the traffic. The center of that community is always jammed with cars. So I would find myself hedging my bet on the next one versus bringing everyone into the scene as readily, staging sooner.
Right.
It's, you're sort of, we also don't have,
thousands of resources.
No one's coming. Sedona's sort of an island too, operationally.
Right.
We have wonderful partners and near neighbors.
Yeah.
But no one's coming.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's not an auto aid situation. It's much more like mutual aid for us to get someone, because the distance is for them to get there.
Yeah, but even mutual aid is still
it's a ways,
a long ways out.
and they're busy too. I mean, that whole Verde Valley area is really growing.
Right. They got their own problems.
They got their own problems for sure. Yeah, it's unique and it's cool. The neat part about working there is everyone's in on anything big.
Yeah.
And the diversity of calls. So yes, we do the repeat user. We go into their house over and over, like everywhere.
Yeah.
We do the slip, trip, fall thing. We do the hotel alarm sounding thing a lot because there's so many resorts. But the same person might be on that high angle rescue, jump on the UTV across town and go down a dirt road for the UTV rollover there, and then come back for the brush fire, the whatever. So it's pretty diverse, and everyone gets to share that. So
That's
I think
cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. I remind myself, I heard one time someone say late that, someone had told them, hey, every time you do something, remember that first day on the job, And so someone did it when they were brushing their teeth, and they were like, just be grateful. Remember that feeling, sort of live your interview.
Yeah.
Right. And I think of that all the time. I'm like, you live by the beach, you don't go to the beach much, right?
Yeah.
You forget that you're in this beautiful place that people really are excited to be at.
Right.
And that's when I sense it can become just a job.
Right.
But if you look around, you're like, whoa, this might be all the same things everyone deals with in the fire service, but look at this place.
Look where I get to do it.
Yeah, we get to do it almost in like a national park setting.
Yeah.
I joke like a third of my life I've spent in my part-time residence, which are the fire stations in Sedona, right? So it's pretty cool. You look out your window there.
My resort house.
Yeah, totally. Or you're cooking on the patio.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty amazing for sure. It's
Damn.
beautiful.
Now I'm jealous.
Come on up.
And now I'm hating you.
It's great.
Awesome.
It's fun.
So tell me, in your tenure, like what are some of the things that you've done, the highlights of your career, positions or assignments or things like that have been a highlight for you?
Personal highlights that might not be, newsworthy. Probably, we don't do full, 12, 16-week academies. You have to come with everything pretty much. Still, we're talking about consortiums and stuff.
Fire 1 and 2. And
Fire
all
1 and 2 hazmat, EMT at least.
Right.
That's still our model, though. Everyone's talking new ways to do that, just like us. So
yeah,
it's not as feasible now for people to walk in that. with that. So for many, many years, I assisted with testing and built testing processes. And then that our orientation period, I've always loved that, trying to get people up to speed with our way in just a couple weeks. Super challenging. But that would not be on the headline at all.
Yeah. Did you do that as a training captain or?
No, just on
as a firefighter?
Firefighter, yeah.
Nice.
And then as a captain. In our organization, a lot of things are forced downward because there's a very, even today, very thin administration top chief officer pool for sure. So a lot of autonomy and large projects, including budgets, can be managed to great effect, even at the firefighter level. Yeah, for sure.
That's one of the really cool things about small organizations is the opportunity to be more involved with project management or program management and those types of things.
It's preparatory.
Very, very cool.
And it's very preparatory for moving up. You've already seen behind the curtain.
Right.
You're starting to experience those challenges of the ask.
Right.
You come in with a great idea as a firefighter at the table. When your BC sits there, now you have to go, I had to write up, in essence, a business plan for my idea.
Right. You can't just be the good idea fairy.
You can't.
You actually have to show up with, tell us, that's a great idea, Frayne. Why don't you go make that shit happen?
Yeah, hey, junior BC, good job. But now we have to actually put our money where our mouth is.
Right.
So that was really preparatory.
Yeah.
I think the most challenging time, I was our operations chief for a while as a division chief, which is the number 2 guy, though you're called division chief. During a time of transition, we had many, many chiefs in my tenure there, and which just led to you're just riding one wave after another of uncertainty and change and philosophy, and then add cultural changes, economic changes in those dips and high points, and it's just a lot of uncertainty. It just felt like we've been skating on thin ice for many years there.
In what way?
There's just that feeling of uncertainty of what's coming next. How long are you going to stay? What are you going to change? If that happens,
right?
I mean, every 3 to 5 years for 27 years.
What's this knucklehead gonna do?
It's kind of that way because there's the needed grace period on both parts, right? I'm getting to know you. Hopefully, we're getting to know whoever the new person is coming in, and then let's form a plan together. Hopefully, a lot of times we never got to that. So there was one of those times, and I was actually a very new BC. For various reasons, thought that was what was best. It's not 100% altruistic, but I thought it would be best for us as an organization. Yeah. And I thought with my personality, I could help there too, for sure. Just kind of tend to be hopefully a peacemaker guy and number 2 guy. I think I do well at that. That worked for a while.
Yeah.
And we,
well, as a number 2, it's really, especially when you have that kind of transition taking place, it seems like it puts a lot of pressure on you to hold the line, right? Here's the expectation in our organization. Here's the organizational culture. Here's the things that we do as an organization, and to try to hold some of those sacred cows in place. Yeah. When a new boss comes in.
Yeah. And we were on the heels of the economy. This would have been a lot of grassroots efforts across our world, our business, were taking effect right then. Mostly, and this is from a lot of those folks, because they could not affect change at the higher levels. So they would localize it, things like no negative, but like Tea Party movement, stuff like that. And that really came in strong to Sedona. Or was there and then just manifested. Right. And so we had hundreds of people at our board meetings, which is not true. We've had arrests at the board meetings during that time. So it was very volatile economically, which added to uncertainty. Now you have a new person, which is the 5th new person in 10 years.
Who's trying to figure it out.
And they were doing their best. And here you are, number 2. And it's like, what's that guy doing? How come he's this? Sounds like he's pandering. It's like, well, he has to keep his job in order to make change. So it was a feast of learning. And getting to know a person in like a real topsy-turvy kind of time.
Yeah.
For sure.
So what's something that you would, looking back on that, what's a takeaway for you that was like, okay, here's something I learned that is really tangible for you?
I think I would. No, I know I would. I would have met with the fire chief at the time more with our team, which was only a couple people, and just really asked harder questions. Because it's hard to, and no disrespect towards him or what went on, but it's like I felt like I was doing damage control a lot. Mm-hmm. Most of it was because I just didn't understand the end game. So I think on both of our parts, I think we would write down, if we had today, what were you about? What do you think we should? We probably would have the same list. Oh, you know what I mean? But yeah. I just felt like there was a disconnect. And so I would ask more pointed questions. Yeah. Truth to power, which we've talked about this week in class. Yeah. And not because I was right, just it's worth the discussion. Yeah. So I was very uncertain. Definitely got to that position way sooner than I was prepared for. So I was treading water myself while also trying to affect change, hang on tightly, not lose the floor, help as the good number 2, all in this time where people were just asking us how much the fire engine costs and why we have that one every time we get off a call. That whole thing that was going on that time. Yeah.
Well, the thing that occurs to me, a Brene Brownism comes to my head, which is clear is kind. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, you get into the exec staff and you have to be willing to have hard conversations and ask real questions. Yeah. And you can't let you got to subjugate your ego and lean in. Mm-hmm. And I think that, organizationally, if I can stretch this out to kind of an entire fire department, you have to create a culture where we're able to have those kind of dialogues, right? A firefighter should be able to come to their captain and say, hey, I have a really hard conversation or hard question to ask that might make you uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Maybe not in the middle of a firefight, right? Not maybe. Definitely not in the middle of a firefight. Let me be clear about that. But when you come back to the station, if you don't understand the way something's done or why something's done, you should be able to have that conversation. And company officers need to be able to look at their firefighters and say, hey, what questions do you have? Mm-hmm. Am I being clear? Because if not, maybe I'm saying it in a way that you don't understand. I'm using language you don't get, or I'm not saying anything, right? Just follow my lead. I've heard so many people say, I'm just going to lead by example. That's great, but what if people aren't picking up what you're putting down?
Yeah, I'd say especially with the diverse workforce.
Right.
Your example isn't as apparent as you think, A.
Yes. Yeah.
You're not as consistent as you think, all of us.
Yeah.
B. And everyone learns at their own pace by different means.
Right.
Some aren't soaking things in.
Yeah.
So you have to do the both and.
Yeah.
I think also what came to mind was the tempo. Mm-hmm. At that time in the world, new person coming in, new leadership, and all of us hanging on for dear life economically, even in a pretty affluent community. I think we should have, and I should have been a bigger player in just helping to control the tempo of our actions. So there's discretionary time almost always, especially if you work in an office.
Yep.
You might work for the fire department. Now, personnel, whatever, safety things, of course, all stop. Let's figure this out. But even those, there's time built in there for you to do what's right, sit down and think about it, grab people that are the expert. And we didn't do that very well during that time, myself included. We just kept trucking and, let's figure this out on the run. And that I've learned the tempo control thing in many areas of my life, operationally. But in the office, in that setting, administratively, strategically, the things you think are imminent probably aren't as imminent. And they can't drive you. You have to control that tempo as much as you can. Sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
But that was a key thing during that time that I think just kind of blew up that situation a little bit.
I think that's so important to be able to identify when you have discretionary time and when you do not. Yeah, I had a an old fire chief tell me, there is no light bar in your office.
That's great.
I was like, oh, that makes good sense, right? You don't respond to somebody who walks into your office with a problem like you just got sent on a call.
Yeah,
but
that's great.
we're wired, right, to respond and solve problems in 15 to 20 minute segments. But that doesn't work in the real world.
Yeah.
Right? I've been trying for 30 years to work that stuff out on my wife like that, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, stand by, honey.
You're right.
What?
I got this. She's like, listen, idiot. So, learning that lesson, right? Getting in my office and realizing, hey, when an email comes in and, somebody shoots me an email or a text message, take a breath, step outside the circle of emotion and go, okay, what's really happening here? What's the big picture? Who are my stakeholders, right? Who does this affect? What are the consequences of why are they asking this question or pushing this issue, right? Really think about the big picture because they didn't just come running in with that problem for no reason. There's a lot going on there and it's more than meets the eye. So do yourself a favor and take some time to really understand the whole scene that's taking place.
Sure, and it's not unreasonable for you to have for the person walking in to have an expectation that this doesn't have to happen right now. But we take it that way.
Yes. Well, we have to start setting that expectation.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And another one, articulate that.
Right.
Thank you, just so you know. I'm going to take some time on this because it's worth it.
Yep.
Probably going to make a bad decision right now. I was in the middle of something else, so I'm distracted. Right. I think the tempo of the world, too, is making us think everything is important.
Yes.
We've a lot of people, myself included, have lost how to prioritize things. Everything seems important. My watch goes off, must be important. I can look at it and go, nah. But in that moment, it was so important that I look.
Yeah.
All those things create this false sense of urgency. And then that just parlays into work, of course, especially when you care about work. Yeah. We fool ourselves into thinking that's what caring looks like. But 100% engagement isn't the metric for do I care about my job, right? I mean, 100% 24 hours a day, right?
Right.
But we act that way because we want to do well. Sometimes it feels like that's what's necessary or someone's telling us or a model, right? Like hyper performance in the world is not a good model for all of us because it's just unsustainable. That's the bummer with perform well, but this hyper performance culture thing, I think it's not great. It's burnout. It's a badge of honor for I'm up at 4:00. What were you doing? There's some of that is not good because the saber-toothed tiger is not chasing us. Right? Can't treat everything like a wartime mentality. That's just you'll be burnt out.
Yeah. So, there's so much there I want to talk about. So I want to go back just a second. Yeah. I saw a sign a bunch of years ago that said, poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. And I think about that in terms of how we communicate today. So we'll send a text message or you'll send somebody an email and then you'll get it. This happened to me recently. I got an email and then I got a text message that said, did you get my email? And I'm like, hey man.
That makes me anxious thinking of that.
Settle down.
Yeah,
right?
And I have done that.
Yes. Yeah.
I won't tell you all of it on this text, but read my email. Have you looked yet? Did you get it? How unreasonable is that? I don't care what you were doing is what I'm saying.
Right. So I have a good friend who was a dentist who managed a medical practice with doctors and dentists, et cetera. And he said they had to actually write a policy that explained the rules of engagement for communication. So if I text you, that means I need to talk to you, and then I need you to respond in 24 hours. If I call you, it's an emergency. I need to talk to you now. And if I email you, you have a day or two. So that's all creating agreed upon rules for communication because they were so quick to violate one another's, time. And that's someone the other day was like, when people will call you and say, hey, is now a good time to talk? I don't know. No, it's not. You're calling me when it's convenient for you, not for me.
Correct.
And so I remember, this is going to be kind of years ago, I reached out to a chief. He had told me, hey, I'm here to help you. If you ever want mentorship, blah, 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 I will help you.
Great.
And then, so I was like, okay. So I reached out to him and he never responded. I got so mad because I was like, hey man, you said you would help me.
Yeah.
Well, I realize now that he was probably busier than a one-legged man in a bucking contest and just didn't have the bandwidth. He really wanted to be there for me, but didn't have the space. And so I think about, like, we all have to try to have a little bit of empathy and recognize, hey, the person we're communicating with has limitations and has, other things going. So be mindful of that and ask them, hey, how is the best way for me to communicate with you?
Sure.
For certain things, what have you? What's a reasonable expectation? Be clear about it.
For sure. You're going to take little bitternesses away when they do not respond on your terms, though you've never shared those expectations with them.
Exactly.
Like we chase that all the time. Like this guy, and vice versa, especially different schedules within an organization.
Right.
The expectations are vastly different.
And I'm just going to put this out to the world. If you have reached out to me and I didn't get back to you, it's not because I don't like you. Just nudge me again.
Yeah.
And I will respond. I promise you. I didn't realize how quickly you can lose a series of texts. Or when your phone blows up, next thing you know, it's 25 texts down.
Yeah, I experience that all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So no more excuses about that. But I just, you touched on something else, which was you talked about the burnout. And I feel like this is something that can happen at any level, right? We over-engage, and you talked about it in terms of kind of work-life balance is what I heard you talking about, right? But what about the dude who's dude or dudette working on a fire truck, and they're just constant staffing like crazy, and what does burnout look like to you?
In that context of them?
I mean, yeah, in any context.
For me.
I think it manifests itself the same for everybody, but
yeah, the cause is varied, right?
Yeah.
If I come in with my cup full, maybe a quarter of an inch on top, and then I add all these things, you might not know my baseline, right?
It's okay though. I was told to leave my personal stuff behind.
Don't get me started.
No, I'm trying to get you started.
And that's the bummer of today.
Yeah.
Because we're all walking on jello. That's what it feels like to humanity. The pace of change, uncertainty, add economics, politics, recent wars. I might not be in a place like Israel today, but we feel that for right, wrong, or indifferent. Don't want to, it's not a media problem. It's just a world thing, right? Now add how much, especially a job like ours, dealing with ambiguity is it's like the water we're swimming in.
Yeah.
So that adds a level of stress. So now my cup's getting even more full.
Yeah.
So the worldwide effect of it, we're coming in full, where everyone's 2 incomes to pull this life game off now. We all have the kids that eventually become teenagers, or the new baby, or maybe the twins. Oh no. And, that's a wonderful thing, but that's a stress. We'd be lying. So then we do bring it to work.
You can't turn it off.
You cannot separate a human being from their experiences.
It's a nice idea.
It would be cool.
It's a nice idea.
But then we want that robot that you expect to show up
right.
to be a human to Mrs. Smith.
Right.
Or whomever at the other end. And that you just can't do that. Because now I've left empathy at home also.
Yeah.
I've left my team mentality at home because that robot person can't pull those things off. They're just not going to care about gelling with a team and working together and collaborating and serving. They're just not going to. The burnout piece, I would say many people are there when they're walking in the door, not as an excuse, much more than when I was younger and starting or when you were younger and starting.
Yeah.
It's just how the world has changed, and it's not right or wrong. It's just the reality, and we have to be prepared for that as leaders.
Right.
Like, you can gripe about those things and go, oh, this place and the media and texting and this generation or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're wearing the shirt that says this is now your thing. And by the way, that human being is yours too. I think sometimes in those debates we lose that it's our charge to care for these people while helping them care for the community that we're serving.
Right.
In that debate, because it ends up being blame storm.
Right.
And, oh, you've never heard how I got it. This one guy, that's the worst thing ever, especially modeling it as a leader.
Yeah.
So I think people are coming in partially
flooded.
It may not be burnout. And then our expectation of people is based on a model as far as how much they're going to work, how hard they're going to work, the extracurricular fire department things that may have been among a generation like ours, where I'm gonna go door to door for the political initiative for the local. I'm gonna do these things. Oh, there's a drowning prevention thing that I used to go to when I was redshirt, or whatever the case may be. We're tagging those things because we did it that way,
right?
Without articulating clearly, clear as kind, the new expectation, or that was my old expectation. They come in and we don't tell them that, and then we go, guess what? You're not going home today. But I thought I only work whatever your schedule is. No. Some butts in the seats. Yeah. You got to stay. But what about my
Mando? Here you go.
Totally. And now I'm stuck here.
Yep.
So naturally, I would say even like a newer firefighter or anyone in emergency services is like, man, this isn't really what I signed up for. We're not waving that flag in the academy or in the hiring process. How many days are you willing to work in a row is not an oral board question. So I would say, I don't think it's far off. We're all coming in fuller than we were.
Yeah.
It doesn't take as much. And then add whatever the reason, new expectations for the workforce or that they bring to work.
Yeah.
They want to be at home. They want to have children. They want to have a balanced life. These are the things we were telling our former administrations and cities that we're demanding. What about us? Now they're doing it, and it's almost like we're mad that they're not doing it the way we did a generation before. Yeah. So I know that's all over.
Yeah. Well, what do you do? So I know we all, like, the firefighter coming in, right? What are some things that you do or have done to help pour your cup out?
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, varied things. With varying levels of effect, right?
And let me throw this in there too. This is something that I have to revisit all the time. Because as much as over the years, I feel like I've lived a very, I've managed it pretty well, at different times, but I always have to come back and revisit because a new stress will come in and something different, something changes. So anyways, it just.
Yeah, I too. I experience that daily sometimes, multiple times throughout the day. Right. Seems like whenever you resolve to do a thing, that's the day you can't pull it off even a little, right? So it's interesting you ask. It feels like a setup. I feel like I've talked to you about this before, but I haven't. It's weird. Right. But
listen, there are no tricks here. It's not a setup.
I can say that I've always been the mental health wellness person for others. Mm-hmm. Early CISM team, transition peer support. It's still one of the things that is within my division that I love. Modeling that to provide more levels of care based on the need, actually, instead of a prepackaged program. Though I never did the things for me. Seems like now that seems very cliche. You hear these stories, but that is the truth. I'll be the first one to say we need funding and maybe tap my palm, not a fist pounder, but and really advocate for and sell at the kitchen table, station visits, whatever, that's what's required.
Yeah.
Always been very open about that and never did anything about it. Now I'm a spiritual person. I have faith, which has helped. It's really the compass. But the stickiness of former lives, early life, adult life, all the things that happen to you, and then add our job.
Yeah.
That sticky stuff, it fogs all that and blurs it. So many iterations. One thing that I started realizing, and this is really just a few years ago, that I was full and I was winging it. A person told me one time, and I can't even attribute to them, but they said, we talk about this balanced life, but you can look balanced, but you're really putting so much effort into balancing to make it look like you're balancing. So I picture like someone who's just like their every muscle and fiber, every ounce of strength is trying to keep this thing together. That's not balanced, but from away it looks balanced. I think I was that still in many ways. So interesting. I started running. I always hated running because it was how you got in shape for wrestling and things like that.
And how you were punished for
it was
non-compliance.
Run to that mountain and back, right? So I liked the solitude of it. So, there's a lot of talk about, an extroverted appearing person, which I think I am. I love people. People fill me up. But when I'm done, it has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So the solitude of being on, especially trail running, and live in the perfect spot for that, really started helping me. There's also some things, after talking to some mental health folks about it, the bilateral movement of a run, where your head is bobbing and your arms are moving opposite your legs and things, similar to things like EMDR.
Interesting.
It doesn't reprocess, there's more to that, but it can have that same feeling. And you don't have to think much when you're just in that groove or the flow, right? Which would be the hope.
Yeah.
So, and then it was hit or miss, like just enough. And then one of my favorite people ever who had the greatest positive effect in the shortest amount of time was Jeff Pichura. Mm-hmm. And he worked in Sedona for just really a short period of time. I knew him a little beforehand, stayed in touch until he died afterwards. When he died, it really threw me for a loop because he was my guy.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm about to do that. I'll call pie. I still have those experiences. It's very interesting. Just start a new position, and I had that inclination to let him know.
You don't have your guy.
Don't have that guy. I have other guys, but he just embraced me, didn't have to at all, and really helped me out immeasurably. So when that happened, I'd always been pretty rational. Add that to my faith. I could logically put things in boxes and say, this is why things are happening. There's bigger things at play than me.
Yeah.
And that one, I just couldn't see past very well. Mostly because, in my opinion, he poured himself out for others. And I was the participant or the recipient of that. So that one threw me through a loop, and I was pulling it off. And I just said, that's it. And I had gained some weight, of course, at the time. So I'm like, I'm going to start running again. And I did. And I did a little run and then another run. And I could just tell that became my new calm place.
Right.
And so I still do that. That's where it happens. So then fast forward, we recently have a contract with a new mental health organization, and to pretty good success already. Just started in July. Always an advocate, and I went to a counselor for the first time ever in July of this year. It's actually pretty moving to think about. I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
I've always been proud of the idea, and you don't realize the masks and that you're pulling it off. Now, I wasn't losing it, but I could just tell, similar to like that Viktor Frankl quote that we talked about today, the space between stimulus and response. That's where growth, that's where the money is in life. The rest, you can't really do much about. And I felt like there was no time between those things. It would be stimulus, response, and not anger necessarily, but just short, just isolation, just stay away kind of stuff. It's funny in hindsight. I'm like, I was totally doing all these things. So started going, and it's just been a really good experience. I was surprised that how awkward that would feel. Mm-hmm. Having been this overt advocate, hey, what what you ought to do, yet not practicing what I was preaching. So those two things, interesting side bit, especially being fire fit, would family fit would hopefully come with that. So that it really opened up opportunity. My wife and I are very close. We really are best friends. Opportunities to talk to her about things I've never talked to her about too, as a result of seeing a counselor and stuff too.
Yeah.
So I mean, the fruit is there, still going.
Yeah. I think there's tremendous value, and I don't think we should wait until we're feeling it or symptomatic, for lack of a better expression, right? I don't think we should wait. If you're in this business, you should just go to therapy.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with it, and it's actually good for your brain. You can work through stuff. You can, past traumas, future traumas. You can prepare for trauma,
Absolutely.
build resiliency, come up with tools, and kind of identify things that will be successful for you, and process that stuff. So,
yeah, I agree. I think it's billed wrong still in our business.
Yeah.
Trauma. I think we just need to go.
Yeah.
You don't have to be broken.
Yeah.
To get a little tune up. Just go, talk, try it out.
Yeah.
The bold move is going, and then you'll see the fruit.
Well, you know what's interesting? So today we talked about post-traumatic growth, which neither one of us are experts in. So,
no way.
But what I want to say is that I have said for years that it doesn't matter what you have done or gone through in your life. It matters what you took away from it, what you learned from the experience, but that requires reflection. Requires sitting down and going, what did I learn in this shitty, horrible, interesting, difficult, whatever the experience was? What did I learn about myself or about the world or about the people around me? You have to process that. Sure. And so I think about, like, you can try and do that on your own on a long run, for example, or you can sit down with a therapist who can help you process it. And I have found that tremendously helpful, and have gone to therapy at different points in my life for different reasons. When I was a kid, my parents got divorced. They sent me to a therapist. And then, as an adult, a couple of years ago, I started going again because I realized that my cup was full and I wasn't managing it.
Yeah.
And so it was important to go and go, okay, I got to do something here. Because I advocate for it, but also because, hey, dummy, you are going through this life, and there's this negative stigma when we say it's trauma, but we are all human beings that are very tender and fleshy and vulnerable, and we can pretend we're not. But I'm telling you, you will be stronger and more robust by going to therapy. So
Sure.
I'm proud of you.
Oh, well,
I think it's fantastic.
The less than nurturing things in our life, right? The things that didn't help us move the ball forward.
Yeah,
that's cumulatively those can push you off course the same way.
Right.
I think. So,
Yeah.
and then when a trauma comes, you have zero capacity.
yeah.
So,
So, okay, I'm gonna pivot a little bit.
Okay.
You are involved with the
Arizona Burn.
yes. Well, is the Burn Foundation?
Arizona Burn Foundation.
Yeah. So you're involved with the Burn Foundation. I know you go to camp every year. How did you get involved with that?
Yeah, it's I'm glad we're talking about this now. After I'm proud to talk about what we just talked about, but it's it lights me up like nothing else except my own family.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's Arizona Burn Foundation is it's a mixture of the air I breathe. In 2000 or 2001, we had firefighters going to the Camp Courage, which is the children's burn survivor camp. And at the time, it was a different program then. It's really grown and improved. We would bring an ambulance to camp and do this really lengthy standby as part of just assistance. And so I signed up for a couple days of that. And what I experienced there has probably formed the next 20 years more than many things. It just taught me humility. It taught me that anything good that's happened to me probably wasn't me, because here's these children that had a thing sometimes purposefully happen to them that was beyond their control. They contributed nothing but the place they were in. So the flip side of that is, that didn't happen to me, and some of these good things. So it is a yearly brain reboot when you see the strength of both adult burn survivors and children burn survivors, seeing them thrive against everything that I feel would have set me back, and more, because often the demographic of a childhood burn, it's not the greatest situation many times, family life, things like that. So they're overcoming a lot and things I can't even fathom.
Yeah.
That I didn't have to deal with. So it blew my doors off being there and seeing this and seeing these people that at the time, it seemed like, wow, they're just showing up for these kids and this magic is happening at this camp. There's, of course, a lot more, as I've come to realize after being involved for so long. So then I came back as sort of a logistics helper. It's a huge logistics endeavor.
Oh, yeah.
They set up like a mini city out in the woods outside of Prescott at a camp. And so I helped with that for years, and then got into the young adult and leader and training program, which is the teens. So they have kids that go to Camp Courage that are, depending on when a family will let them go, maybe around 5 all the way to 16. And then they can go to this other program, which runs concurrently at the same location. It's intermixed, which is called LIT. It's Leaders in Training. I started assisting with that and then took it over. We've been doing that with teens and young adults, leading that with a great team for, it's got to be 10 years or so. And that curriculum is teaching how to be a counselor as you transition from being the person served at camp to then serving the community, their tribe, their burn community, along with basic leadership skills, life skills of which sadly are a lot of times lacking. Everything from here's how to sit still for an interview, here's how to communicate, conflict resolution. There's also some really great art therapy things that we have people come in for. Really just to set them up to be citizens and thrive, because those kids and young adults, they're really on their heels in life a lot of times with all the things that are just sort of pressuring against them to keep their momentum, or keep them from having momentum anyway. So yeah, that turned into helping in many areas with Arizona Burn Foundation, the young adult thing and the leader in training thing for sure. What's really cool is last year we went to the National Ability Center in Park City, Utah. They do adaptive skiing, adaptive bike riding. So if I don't have a limb, if my hands, or if I have limitations, which many burn survivors do, those aren't limitations anymore.
Nice.
And so we went skiing, we went bike riding, we did all these things in Park City, and we partnered with the University of Utah Burn Center with their group, and took 8 young adults from Arizona, met 8 from Utah.
That's cool.
Last year, and we're actually going to do it again in January.
Very
so it's
cool.
been really great. Yeah, it's a great organization. I love it.
What is something that, or how can people get involved or provide support, or?
Yeah, if you're in Arizona or not, you can go to it's arizonaburn.org online. They also have a Facebook and Instagram presence too.
All the social medias.
Anywhere where you pick up social media. There's ways on their website to donate. You know, they are a nonprofit organization that works closely with the 2 different burn centers in Arizona.
Yeah.
There's myriad volunteer opportunities that can be everything. It can be very daunting to jump into a thing like that. So, like, you don't have to go to camp and help out for a week.
Right.
You can go and do one thing. You can do a smoke detector walk in a neighborhood, even your neighborhood. You can do a phone call thing. You could be a camp counselor. You could do anything.
Yeah. Well, it's this is going to be too late by the time this podcast is airing, but just right currently as we sit here, they're doing a firefighter cook-off challenge.
They are.
Right? And so while I was sitting in class today, I donated some money to that.
There you go.
Because there was a challenge put on the table, so I jumped in. And those are different things you can do for sure.
Yeah, the Arizona Fire Service has been partnered with ABF for many, many years, and that partnership is growing. In fact, if you're an Arizona firefighter, camp this year, which will be in June, every year it's the first or second week of June in Prescott. On the Friday of that week, there's a firefighter day. And firefighters from really all over the state will come up. Some will bring an apparatus, but they'll just do games on this field for the kids. And it many times ends up turning into a little bit of a water fight.
I can't imagine.
Because it's very hot up there, even in Prescott that time of year. So yeah, if you're interested in that, there's information on there too. And it's amazing the low level time commitment and the low level money that people can give that they would think would be inconsequential, but the impact is huge.
Yeah.
So you can go there for 4 hours and you're affecting 100 kids' lives positively.
Yeah.
It's to say it's not fulfilling would be a lie, and to think that's selfish is something that I've learned over time to disregard, because if I'm fulfilled from doing it, if it's filling me up, if it's lighting me up, then I can help them and continue the mission too. So that's one part. I've always thought selfishly, I can't imagine not going.
Right.
But I think it's not selfish. And now my son goes as a counselor. So it's pretty cool. Kind of brainwashed him into it. That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a couple of rapid fire questions, and we'll pull this to a close. What is one piece of advice you've been given that is just horrible piece of advice you've been given?
Ooh. I've been modeled a lot of poor, fit advice before. It's funny. It's just one. I don't know how poignant it is. It may be because of our curriculum here. But anyway, one of them, the us-them within an emergency services organization was day one just hammered into me by leaders, quote unquote. And I am not that way anyway. The us-them, even early on.
You mean like the exec staff versus the floor
kind
of thing?
Administrators, dispatchers.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was modeled behavior too. It was like, oh, what are they parking in our spot for? I guess you can go help them. And with just dripping disdain, Oh no, we don't go to the Puzzle Palace, right? Oh, if you go to Station 1, which is where our admin is, you get out of there quick, Don't go upstairs where the chiefs are, all that whole thing. So that was modeled, but it was pretty explicit at first. It's funny, talk about mental health, which just popped in. Early on we had CISM team thing, and this was right before I got on it, and my captain said, we don't do that to me.
Nice.
So in hindsight, even though that model was applied in flawed ways throughout our industry, and it was a one-size-fits-all thing for many organizations, so a lot of people look at that as a bad thing anyway, but it has its place.
Yeah.
But at the time it had no place, and I was directed to not do it. That'd be one.
Yeah.
I think too, this popped in my head too, sorry. The idea that as you're training a person, you have to add this fake anxiety to the learning process, which is counter to learning. So it would, it's the person who hasn't had enough sets to understand how to do the thing that now you're adding the yelling, the noise, the whatever. They haven't learned it yet.
Right.
Even to a level of understanding that they could do it on their own without direction. And now we're adding a stimulus that creates the anxiety and the emotion. So now you stop the learning process, and then we measure them. That's a failure. What am I going to do with this person? But we don't understand education and how humans learn. That's a piece that was like, no, we're going to do it right now. It's like, he's brand new.
Right.
I think we should, he doesn't know. Of course he's not going to do well. Even early, I knew that. And that was maybe not given as advice, but that was definitely something modeled. That it's just it's so counterintuitive and counter mission. Like, what are you doing? No wonder. Oh, now they're going to wash out? Oh, go figure.
Okay, let me ask you another one. What is something that has surprised you in life so far?
Ooh. In life?
Yeah.
Well, a recent one that's wonderful. The mystical nature of being a grandpa.
Yeah.
It's everything they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was very surprised that you
Nice.
could love something like that with no strings attached. That'd be one.
Okay, here's another one.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be fireground fit?
To get fireground fit or to be?
Yeah, however you want to interpret
Either
the
way.
question,
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think the question was, what does it mean to you to be fireground fit?
Okay. That's a little bit both then. Much of what we talked about already.
Yeah.
I think it starts humility, vulnerability to admit I'm not there yet. So a continuous learning mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You might say growth mindset or whatever, which is so hard to pull off all the time, obviously. Your head has to be right. And I get we're not always right. Like here I am just telling you that it's all a process with me personally. So you're not...
And you're a grandfather.
I know. It's not complete. And that's okay on all these things. So I think being
Fireground fit.
fireground fit. Sorry, I thought here I wasn't going to say it
This is the
wrong.
name of the podcast.
I know it is, but I didn't want to say it wrong, and here I am overdoing it. So being fireground fit,
Yeah.
you don't arrive. I don't think. I think it's a trajectory. Because if I put a goal, what do I do after that? Right? So there's a baseline, I imagine, but your head has to be in the right space. Starting from that vulnerable spot, admitting I'm not there yet, growing. Of course, there's a physical component to it, but I think there's a fitness component. Like, are you fit for this? In that way, that also promotes that to who you're with. It seems like we do everything in teams, or should. Modeling it would be, because that's also enriching and helpful too. Yeah, I think there is a physical component, a wellness physically, but it has to be a mindset thing too. So always learning, being teachable, yeah, and communicating well. I think that's the thing that blows up the world. We are horrible communicators, even as I've stumbled through this.
Did your rapid fire questions?
Yeah, I don't know if that.
All right. What's one question you have for me?
Ooh, let's see. What lights you up? What's a thing that makes you go, oh yeah, I love that. I'm glad you asked.
This question.
Oh, that's too easy.
That's a great question. Okay, so by the way, FYI, this is the first time I've ever asked this question on the podcast.
What?
I've never done this before. So
You got to put that in
I've
there.
never reversed the tables.
Yes.
So what lights me up? There's multiple things here. So when I think about the fire service, when we are training and we are all in and we are focused on the mission and the entire crew is in lockstep, that fires me up. I love that. When people show up and they're engaged and they care, that lights me up. Off the fireground, in life, with my family, when I go to an event, a family event, or I walk into the living room and I hear my family laughing, that just brings joy to my heart. Nice. And it's interesting because when I think of that, sometimes I think that it's not as often or frequent as I would like. And so I go, man, why is that missing? But that's what lights me up.
That's cool.
Yeah, it chokes me up actually as I think about it.
Oh, thanks for sharing. I mean it.
Thank you so much, man, for being sitting down with me and talking and spending some time and sharing your time and talents with us.
Oh,
and
No,
if somebody
you.
wants to catch you on social media, where would they find you at?
I'm on each one. I do not remember my little handles, but I'm on LinkedIn, Buzz Lechowski. It probably says Eric Buzz Lechowski because that's my
Who's that guy?
full name. And then Instagram.
All right.
It's Buzzsaw511.
Right on. Thanks, Buzz.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, folks, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning into the Fireground Fitness Podcast. Special thanks to Buzz for sharing your time and talents with us, my brother. If you are enjoying the Fireground Fitness Podcast, get on over to whatever platform it is you enjoy. Subscribe. The episode will drop in the middle of the night when you least expect it. Also, get on over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the podcast. That helps drive traffic over here and gets us into more people's ears. Hopefully sharing some cool stuff and lessons learned with them. Now, the most important thing is that you take the lessons you've learned here today, you go and you apply them in your life in some meaningful way. Take care of the community. Take care of the fire service. Take care of your brothers and sisters. Go on out there. Get some.